To perform decimal column multiplication, there's a couple of ways you can do it. I'll show you the way that it's laid out in Maths Pathway because this way makes a lot of sense and it helps you understand so that even when you do one of the methods that's more of a shortcut, you'll understand why it works and what you're doing. Now, we've got two numbers here, 23.4 multiplied by 1.3. One thing you might want to do at the beginning is just estimate in your head approximately what are we looking for here. 1 and a bit lots of 20 something. I'm thinking the answer should be round about 30-ish or something like that. Now sometimes with these questions you can estimate the answer and that helps you know if you might have made a mistake when the answer comes out and it looks reasonable or not reasonable. Other times you'll have a question that has such crazy big numbers or small numbers that it's really hard to estimate. But always, if you can, have a look and think, what am I expecting? Now what we do first is, in Maths Pathway they say, well, it's not really very nice working with decimals. If we can, we'd prefer to work with whole numbers. So is there anything you can do to change to 23.4 into a whole number? Well, if the decimal point was moved across one place to the right, it would be 234, wouldn't it? Now, how could you convert that back to 23.4? Well, we multiplied by 10 to convert it into 234, so if we divide it by 10 again, it's like we turned it straight back to where it was. We've multiplied by 10, but we've also divided by 10. So if you can see that this part here is actually the exact same number as this one here, but we've just turned it into some more simple numbers, then we've achieved something. Right now we have to multiply by 1.3, but we don't want 1.3, we want a nice whole number. So again, we can multiply this number by 10 by moving the decimal one place to the right. That'll give us 13. But if we've multiplied by 10, we need to make up for it by also dividing by 10. And now you can see that 13 divided by 10 would be the exact same number as 1.3. So we haven't really changed the question, we've just made it look a little bit more friendly. Now, we know from order of operations that if we're dividing and multiplying, we can do these in any order we like. So the next step is to rearrange it and do the hard stuff first. Let's do 234 times 13, because that's the tricky bit, and then divide by 10 and divide by 10 again. And at this point you might like to say, hold on a minute, if you're dividing up something into 10 parts and then dividing those into 10 parts, you're actually dividing by 100. So I can tidy up this line like this. Now, next step is to say, all right, what is 234 times 13? Hold on a minute, I'll just go over here and work it out. Now, you've learned how to do this before, a multiplication algorithm. 3 4s are 12, 3 3s are 9, add 1, we get 10, and over here we've got 7. Put down the 0 when you're starting your second line. 1 4 is 4, 1 3 is 3, and 1 2 is 2. Adding them up, I can see that we've got 3,042, which still needs to now be divided by 100. Now, notionally our decimal point on this number is right at the end because it's 342 point nothing. So to divide by 100, I can move the decimal 2 jumps to the left, and my answer will now be 30.42. And remember when I estimated, I was thinking my answer might be round about 30-ish, so it looks like I've done something right. Now, some of you might think, well, that's an awful lot of working to work this out. Is there any way that I could do it a little bit more quickly? What we've done here is we've basically worked out 234 times 13, which is really close to the question that we were given, but our one that we've worked out had no decimals in it. What if we'd put some decimals in and done all our working over here? Is there anything that we've done here that we could just do much more quickly and easily? Well, the quick way is to say you can work out 234 by 13, ignore the decimals in your question, and get your answer 3,042, but it's what you need to do with it at the end that's important. Now, why did we divide by 10 and then divide by 10 again? Because 234 is 10 times bigger than what we were asked to do, and 13 is also 10 times bigger than what we had in our original question. So if you go ahead and work out 234 times 13 and get 3,042, your answer is going to be 10 times too big from using this number incorrectly, and another 10 times too big from using this number incorrectly. It'll be 100 times too big. Now the quick way to work that out is to say we have one jump in the question here and one jump in the question here. So we're going to need 2 jumps of the decimal in the answer. And if you're using this method, just think to yourself 234 times 13, work it out, have a look at your jumps that are in the question, add them up. Now it doesn't make any difference whether you've had 2 jumps in this part or no jumps here, it's the total jumps in the question has to equal the total jumps in the answer. And don't worry about putting your decimals in this part, this is just your working area so that you can get to your answer. Now let's have a look at one that might be a little bit more tricky and see if that method works out for us. I recommend you go the long way for most of the questions in the module, but as you're getting good at it, you might like to start doing this shortcut because it's more likely to be something that you'll use in later years rather than writing out all of that working. Let's do one that we can't easily estimate because it's a really nasty looking small number, and we'll multiply that by 1.3. Alright, so my strategy last time was to say, forget the decimals, let's just look for how big this number is. Let's go ahead and do 67 times 13 instead. Now, 67 times 13, I can easily do. And adding up, I have 871. But that's not what my question asked me. I don't really want 67 times 13. I want a number that's a lot smaller. How much smaller? Well, this number is a lot smaller than 67. 67 has its decimal here, and the number I was given is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 jumps smaller than that. And this is actually not 13, it's 1.3, which is another jump smaller than that again. So in total, I've actually got 6 jumps in my question. So I need to put 6 jumps in the answer, all to the left. So if my decimal's here, I need to make 6 jumps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If there's nothing to jump over, you put zeros to jump over, and my decimal finished here. So the answer to this question is 0. Now I notice we put a 0 before the decimal point. I need 3 zeros, and then my 871. And it wasn't really too much harder than doing 67 times 13. I just had to account for the fact that it wasn't 67 times 13, it was something a lot smaller.